Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. Brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And we'll get you to the weekend here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Preston Guy, 15 minutes from right now, talking some football. Got to get you ready for Conference Championship Week in the National Football League. Can Jaden Daniels get it done once again? SEC basketball, including LSU and Alabama. We're going to do all of that, plus the Saints, who kind of have their pick of the litter now in the NFL coaching waters. All that's coming up over the next 2 hours, but we're going to start with baseball the same way we start each and every day. That's with our Genesis Opening Drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Jay Johnson and a handful of his older players took to the microphones today as the snow was melting off the Alex Box Stadium roofs. It's maybe not a first all time. It does snow every once in a while in January, but it doesn't happen very often that they're cranking things up from a baseball perspective at Alex Box Stadium, and they're getting snow out of the way. But that is the case here, and they're off and running for the next 3 weeks before the season opener, 3 weeks from right about now, quite honestly. At the box against Purdue Fort Wayne. And so I wanted to start with what kind of I heard from Jay Johnson today. I got used to the Pulmonary Media Day. And the Pulmonary Media Day, he literally went through the entire diamond and the batting order just about 3 weeks out and gave you almost everything. I mean, he was going to go through everything. Ed Ogeron was the same way at the podium at SEC Media Days. You could go through the whole depth chart. And Jay Johnson hasn't necessarily done that. He will take questions, and I thought he was rather candid today, kind of talking through some of the situations they're working through over the course of the next 3 weeks to get ready for opening day. And what everybody wants to hear about is the pitching, because you've lost Gage Jump, and you've lost Luke Holman, and you've lost Griffin Herring. And I've got a story up at LouisianaSports.net right now. But these are some stats that I dug out when writing that today. When Griffin Herring pitched in SEC games, LSU went 7-4. 7-4. When he did not pitch in SEC games, they went 6-13. Y'all remember, like, he pitched every high-level spot that LSU had really the whole season. And they had to go to him earlier than they wanted to in the regional, and he was brilliant for 6 innings in that game. They didn't have him late, and they had to go to Gage Jump, and that didn't work out. But Herring was the guy, but Holman and Jump were fantastic in the starting rotation down the stretch as well. Of Gage Jump's last 7 starts, LSU went 6-1. Luke Holman's last 6 starts, LSU went 5-1. The one loss was the loss to North Carolina in the marble game of the regional in Chapel Hill. But the point remains, like, LSU won 11 of the last 13 starts that that Holman and Jump made, and basically Herring had to pitch for LSU to win. And those guys are gone. So the question is, like, who do you have now that can pitch in high leverage spots? And Jay Johnson didn't really shy away from kind of going after the names that he thinks are going to be high leverage pitchers on this team. The first name he mentioned, the first one, was Connor Ware. Now, I've talked about Connor Ware since the fall. I've written about Connor Ware. I said I think he's got Griffin Herring written all over him. And that's kind of what I expect Connor Ware to be. The other names he brought up, another name that I wrote about on Tuesday, if you read my mailbag on LouisianaSports.net, and somebody asked me for a breakout arm or breakout freshman, I think everybody's thinking William Schmidt, and I think William Schmidt's going to be great. But Kason Evans is a guy I've heard more about, and he was the second name that Jay Johnson mentioned. Then he went to Zach Cowan from Wofford, Anthony Ianson from UC San Diego, Gavin Guidry, Cade Anderson, Chase Shores, names, you know, those are the names he kind of pushed out there as guys that are going to get stretched out over the next 3 weeks. It doesn't mean they're the only guys who are eligible to start a game this year. It doesn't mean that everybody else needs to pack it up and transfer. These are the guys they're going to get looks at for probably an extra inning at a time, 2 instead of 1, 3 instead of 2, over the course of the next 3 weeks to get ready. And I kind of feel like right now, if I had to guess the starting pitchers for LSU's first weekend, I would go with Cade Anderson, I would go with Gavin Guidry, and I would go with Chase Shores. I think Connor Ware is going to pitch in the back end of the bullpen, and I think they want to see very much Ianson and Cowan and Evans with Schmidt and a bunch of the guys that you'll see pitch over the course of the first 3 weeks where LSU plays a ton of baseball. But I think what's interesting is that you're going to see basically the first couple of weeks be auditions where guys are going to be kind of slated to go 2 innings, 3 innings, 4 innings, but maybe back-to-back. Maybe you see a starting pitcher go 3, and then you see a relief pitcher go 3 innings, and they're both kind of auditioning for the same thing. I don't think until probably a month down the line, you're going to see somebody try to give you 6 innings. I don't feel like Jay Johnson right now, and this sounds ridiculous now. Keep in mind, it didn't sound ridiculous in the middle of January in 2023. But in the middle of January in 2023, I think Jay Johnson saw Paul Skeens and goes, okay, he's going to be a weekend starter for us. Again, Paul Skeens was hitting some in the fall and had the ability to play some first base. He was not Paul Skeens yet. But Jay saw that's a guy that's going to start. And I don't know that he can point to anybody right now on that list and go, absolutely SEC starter, better than the 6 other guys on this list. That right now I don't think is the case. I told you earlier this week that I thought Cade Anderson was the leader to start opening day. Wouldn't start me if he didn't even start any of the 3 games. And I think a lot of people are looking at Chase Shores going, he's the ace. Hold on. He had a good fall, wasn't a dominant fall, and he's still learning to throw that slider. If you remember with Chase Shores, when he was coming out of the bullpen as a freshman, which he started in the rotation for the 23 team, then he was moved into the bullpen, and he became a high-leverage bullpen guy, and ultimately blew his elbow out pitching out of the bullpen in a huge spot against Tennessee on a that was a Friday game, being that it was game 2 of the series. He did not throw a lot of sliders. He was throwing a ton of just fastballs. And yeah, a 96-mile-an-hour fastball is good, but if you just throw a 96-mile-an-hour fastball, you're not starting in the SEC. Ty Floyd had to learn that. It took him 2 years. Chase Shores couldn't pitch last year. So it's still a work in progress. I am not telling you that Chase Shores can't be a dominant starting pitcher in the SEC. I'm just telling you that I don't think he is today. He didn't have to be today. They don't have a game. They have a scrimmage out at the box. But they're going to look at Gavin Guidry, who's holding his fastball a little bit better than he had previously. He can hold it at 93 or so a little bit longer. He's still got that hammer of a breaking ball, and he's developing a changeup. They're going to let him have an opportunity to see if he can pitch. And trust me, it's a good fallback plan to have Gavin Guidry. If he doesn't work out as a starter, hey, go to the back of the bullpen. We know what you can do in high leverage spots. He's been really, really good at that throughout the course of his career. Then you've got pitchability guys in Ianson and Cowan, and then this uber talent in Case and Evans, who I think probably caught the LSU coaching staff a little bit off guard in the fall because he got up to 99. He's sitting there at 95. He's got a really, really, really good changeup. And I know that everybody around here, because of proximity and the Major League Baseball draft and the talent and all the stuff that you've seen on YouTube and him coming on this station, everybody's going to talk William Schmidt, William Schmidt, William Schmidt. And that's great. I think you're going to see William Schmidt in the first 4 games that LSU plays. I don't know in what capacity, but he'll pitch. Case and Evans, I think right now the staff has more confidence in. And I don't think that's something that I was prepared to tell you in July. Nate Yeske is working with William Schmidt. They've got some things to iron out. He's a long, lanky dude, and that's a lot of moving pieces. And quite frankly, you don't have to locate much very well to strike high school kids out when you throw 97 miles an hour and you spin a breaking ball as well as some pitchers in Major League Baseball. And in terms of spin rate, William Schmidt's is that good in terms of just how tight he can spin it. The command, the pitchability side of things, he's still got work to do. And he's never played a college game, so it's no big deal. I think that there are going to be people that listen to me and go, oh, this guy's dogging Schmidt. Like, I didn't think he's any good. Not what I'm saying. I just think that it's interesting to kind of go through this list of names and look at the possibilities. And this is the reality of it. You really need 5 guys that are rock solid. LSU has had a hard time getting a third starting pitcher into the mix that's consistent. The gold standard, honestly, around here was that's 8 years ago in 2017 when Eric Walker nailed down that Sunday spot. You threw Lang in the opener, Poche in game 2, and then Walker came out there and threw strikes and change-ups and was awesome in game 3. Beyond that, like, you've struggled to find a game 3 guy. I would love to have that. I think it's a big help. It's not mandatory, but inevitably you need guys to start games in the postseason, and it's sometimes you got to count on Nate Ackenhausen to go beat Tennessee with 6 shutout innings. Sometimes you got to count on Will Helmers to go out there out of the bullpen in the final game of the regional and throw 6 brilliant innings, and you got to count on guys to do things they haven't done all year. I'd really prefer if LSU had somebody step up and do it most of the year. And you don't have any proven commodities here. All of these guys have a question mark. Kason Evans is a freshman. Zach Cohen has never pitched in the SEC. He's a Wofford transfer. Anthony Ianson from out west, where they basically abandoned college baseball. Gavin Guidry, been a reliever for 2 years. Cade Anderson was a spot reliever last year and didn't really have a huge impact on the team. Jay Shores coming off Tommy John surgery. Connor Ware coming from junior college. Like, you don't have anybody that you're ready to just, boom, plug right in there and let's go. So you're going to have to look at all of them. And these 3 weeks are going to be very, very important. Some of the stuff that I'm telling you right now can change over the course of 3 weeks. But like it did with Stephen Milam last year. At this point last year, Stephen Milam was a non-factor. His fall was so bad, it was not even worth having a discussion about. But they threw him out there for a couple of bats early on, and they started to see some things in practice, and all of a sudden, you got that guy in the lineup, and he ends up starting 60 games. So things can change over the next 3 weeks. I'm just kind of giving you what I saw in the fall, kind of what I've heard over the winter break, and then reading things through what Jay Johnson had to say today about his pitching staff. And I was pleasantly surprised as someone who covers the team, not necessarily as a fan of the team, but who covers the team and wants to have something to come on here and talk about. I was pleasantly surprised that he honestly laid out the group that he's looking at to stretch out at this point in the calendar. It's early. They got a lot of work to do. But that's kind of where things sit as of right now. You can go back and check out on YouTube everything Jay has to say. If you don't have time to sit there for 30 minutes and sift through all that sound, you can go read my piece on LouisianaSports.net. I kind of went through the entire diamond, talked about catcher, talked about the bullpen, talked about Milo and Braswell on the left side of the infield, had the discussion about who's going to play in the outfield, and the quotes are all there from Jay Johnson. So go over to LouisianaSports.net and check that out. It's right there at the top of the homepage. Certainly do appreciate that. That's our Genesis opening drive. Our Friday shows are brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Awesome day to get on by and grab a po' boy from our friends over there at Cork's. I highly suggest you do that, or just grab something to watch the football games on Sunday. If you got a whole crew coming over to watch the Commanders, Corks can help you out with some catering. The whole menu's at corksfishandshrimp.com. All right, let's step aside Preston Guy when we come back on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
I'm telling you about One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety can be a big, big issue in the bathroom. A lot of us were out there slipping on ice earlier this week. That can happen in the bathroom. Certainly for those who ages, that can be a very, very hazardous thing. So if you've got an aging loved one and you'd like to do some things in the bathroom to make things a little bit safer, mitigate some of that risk, they can do it. They can put non-slip floors in. They can do the guardrails and handrails around the slippery areas. They can put a walk-in tub to make things convenient, things safer. They can put a bench in the shower as well. All those things they do all the time at One Bath and Closets. So start your process with David Duvall and his team today. Go to OneBathAndClosets.com and request that free consultation. Have the conversation. Here's what we can do. Here's what it'll cost. Financing options are available if you're interested in that. It's all there at OneBathAndClosets.com. It's David Duvall and One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
Friday's show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. This time in the show, we always talk to our guy, Preston Guy, TigerBait.com, on some LSU football. Preston, hope you made it through the snow just fine. How are you?
Hunt, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate you for having me on today, despite baseball media day and basketball again going down tonight. Appreciate you for making time for me.
I would do 2 hours on baseball if I just had to do it exactly my way. But I am glad to have you aboard. We do need to talk a little bit about football. The transfer portal, as far as entrants go, is just about done. Ohio State and Notre Dame have some more hours to go before they can jump in. Do you feel like LSU is done assembling its pre-spring roster?
I think they're done. There's a couple guys. Notre Dame had a couple starting offensive linemen hit the portal who, Brian Kelly did initially help recruit, but I suspect that LSU won't be in play for those guys. I think they're kind of done for now. They want to wait till that spring window, evaluate what they have. That's another part that we don't talk about too much is you do get to evaluate in spring and decide, oh gosh, this is actually a bigger hole than we thought, or no, we're short up here, and then determine what you need. Of course, there's going to be exponentially less available in spring, but just like evaluations go down here and there, other places it's going down, and you can find some quality guys in spring. If you remember, Joe Burrow was not on roster for spring ball, and he turned out just fine for LSU, I think.
Jaden Daniels wasn't either, so there's how that goes. The one question I have that's significant in my view is tackle. You've got some guys who were highly recruited, but nobody that's got a bunch of skins on the wall. You go get Josh Thompson from Northwestern, who has played tackle but was a guard this past season. How do you feel about tackle right now?
I think that tackle, now that they shored up safety so well with Tamarcus Cooley and company, I think that now your right tackle probably becomes your closest thing to a hole. Of course, you've got some guys you feel good about, like Weston Davis. You think he's got potential, no doubt, but you don't have proven, bona fide starting quality guys. And, whenever a guy's not starting or not playing often, you're always looking for signs of life in them that are a little harder to tell because we're not at practice. We're not actually evaluating them. And, you start to see how much of a priority were they to get on the field. And it really seemed like Weston Davis, the way they were shuffling things around, they weren't actively trying to get him in the game. I do feel good about Tyree Adams because that's a guy they were working hard to get in the game and get reps. But just looking, reading the cards from last year, I don't have too much confidence in that right tackle spot. I like the other four guys. I hope DJ Chester can improve his play based on shifting to left guard. Maybe that's a more natural spot for him, but I feel good more so on the other four than I do at right tackle right now.
I mean, how big a deal is tackle, especially when you consider what the identity of this LSU offense figures to be, which is going to be thrown at a good amount?
Oh, it's important. I'll argue that after the struggles we've seen in this offense from a year ago, the guards are probably more important. Center's probably more important because that provides an interior running game. I think that your tackles are important, and you've got to have pass protection. But we saw last year you had two elite bookend tackles, and you couldn't run the ball, right? And because of that, your offense became one-dimensional and predictable. And that's why that offense was so frustrating to watch last year, because there certainly were a lot of good pieces. Nussmeier certainly impressed you many times, and his numbers would look good, but then you're not winning the game, or, and it's just like, why? It's because you couldn't run the ball. So I think they're important. If I had to pick one right now, I want an interior offensive line. I want to be able to run the ball consistently, give you some balance, and open up some things in the passing game.
Well, let's talk about the inability to run the ball. Let's divvy out some reasons why, because these were guys who were better pass blockers than run blockers, because they weren't developed well by their position coach, because the creativity wasn't there in the run game. What do you see when you watch?
Yeah, injuries at your guard spot, that certainly didn't help at all. Because you just didn't have the depth there. Your offensive tackles were certainly guys built more for pass protection, and they had their whole career built around a guy, Jaden Daniels, where running game was from quarterback, and then all of a sudden you're having to adjust to handing it off to the running back to get any kind of motion in the running game because Nussmeier wasn't going to give you anything. And then your center was really struggling. He was the lowest graded offensive lineman you had. And, anytime your center is struggling so mightily, it sets the tone for the rest of the line because other guys got to help chip in, and he makes your calls. And if you're missing those calls, it just kind of sets the whole thing off. So I think that there were a number of problems But mostly, it starts with just the culture of most of those guys were used to a system with Jaden Daniels where you didn't have to be, hog mollies, ground and pound to get, pad level down and put some pressure on those knuckles and get forward. It was more of a finesse type situation that they had grown accustomed to.
Quite literally an extension of the offensive line would be the tight end spot. You've got Trey'Dez Green, you've got Bauer Sharp and Donovan Green that came in. Then Jay LaFleur is coming up from the high school ranks. Do you think that LSU is better equipped to block from the tight end spot next year?
Well, Bauer Sharp is going to be a good blocker. I don't know if he's as good as Mason Taylor is at run blocking. I think Trey'Dez Green is going to be a better receiver than Mason Taylor. I know that might be a little blasphemous to say about LSU's best receiving tight end in school history. It's not exactly a lofty title, I don't necessarily think, but I am going to give that to him. But Trey'Dez Green is an elite receiver, but he needs to put on weight to be able to block. And I think when he's in the game, no, you're not going to be improved. I think Bauer Sharp could be decent. I'm not saying I dislike this tight end room at all because it's good and there's a lot of promise to it, but I don't think that these guys are going to be, I think it's going to be a downgrade from last year in terms of run blocking.
Are you a little surprised that Brian Kelly is letting Trey'Dez Green run around with a basketball team?
A little bit, because, it's how many of those guys do we talk about? Oh, he's going to go play basketball, and then it just doesn't pan out because the scheduling is just so brutal, A little bit, but good on him. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt. Hopefully, I'd say this about Trey'Dez Green, particularly that he's a guy who needs to put on muscle mass and be able to block maybe 20 lean pounds of muscle. It is a little sad to see. Basketball is a conditioning sport. If you need to trim down, go play basketball. If you need to bulk up, man, you need to get in the weight room. So a little surprising, but you understand for a guy of his caliber, sometimes you have to concede some things. Sometimes you have to be like, yeah, come on in. I'll let you play basketball. And that's probably what that situation is. But if I was the coach, I would prefer him to add 20 pounds and get a body build closer to, say, I don't want to say a big hulking tight end, but maybe Gronkowski type build where he's got some muscle and can block a little bit because he does need to improve to become a complete tight end.
Chatting with Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. He's our guest each and every Friday. All right, you give Jaden a shot on Sunday?
I do give him a shot. And let me tell you, if he's in New Orleans for the Super Bowl, that's going to be exciting to see. Second LSU Heisman winner to make the Super Bowl in their first full season where they played the full season. Very exciting stuff. I did not give him a chance against the Lions, so now I'm a believer. Jalen Hurts has a little bit of a tweaked knee, and I know that Philly roster is stacked, but I would take Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts any day of the week. So look, man, I'm gonna just believe until they prove me wrong. That's what I'm going with.
I'm excited to watch on Sunday. We'll see exactly how it goes. Preston, we appreciate some time. Have a great weekend, man.
All right, Hunt. See you soon, man.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. On their YouTube channel, you can find his writing on TigerBait.com as well. He's with us every single Friday. It was interesting to kind of cap here. I hadn't given a lot of thought, quite honestly, to Trey'Dez Green playing basketball because I don't think he's going to help the basketball team all that much this year. I just don't think that's realistic to think. He was with the football team through the 1st of January. And then you got to come back and get acclimated. You hadn't been out there practicing. You got to learn an offense, understand defensive assignments. The game's moving faster than it's ever moved. And there are guys that have been doing this every day, all day for months and years even.
Yeah, but it's not like everything's going really well right now with the team. So maybe
no, it's not. But it's nothing I don't think he can fix unless he can score 20 a night. I don't know that there's anything he can fix. And I bring this up all the time because I think it's a pretty relevant thing to talk about. I talked to Dennis Shaver before I interviewed him for the pregame show back for the home opener, and I asked him if Caden Durham and Jelani Watkins, it wasn't coming to me. If Jelani Watkins and Caden Durham were actually fast enough to run track at LSU where they win national championships, and he said they are, and we'd love to have them, but I understand that at times those guys can get to campus and the football coaches will tell them what to do, and oftentimes that means you can't come run with us because you got to work on something. So that's how those conversations usually go, and I'm just in an offseason that I think is so important for Trey'Dez Green to put on some weight, to understand what he's doing, to learn how to block and all those types of things. I'm surprised, especially since he's supposed to put on weight, he's over there running basketball where you're just going to be running and running and running and running. It's really hard to put on weight during a basketball season. I heard Will Wade talk about that. The guys generally over the course of a basketball season will lose 5 to 8 pounds, kind of depending on their body size, because it's hard to restock with that many calories when you're burning them at that rate. So again, the more I think about it, honestly, the more I'm a little surprised that Trey'Dez Green's out there. I'll be surprised if and when he helps LSU on the basketball floor this season. I will not be surprised when he catches his first touchdown next football season. So that's kind of where I am on the whole thing. We'll see what the future holds for the very, very talented Trey'Dez Green. So thanks to Preston for coming aboard and giving us a little bit of time. All right, when we come forward, let's talk a little bit about the conference championship games to come on Sunday. Jaden Daniels very much involved. We'll do that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. 3 years, complimentary maintenance. How does that sound? Sounds pretty good. Complimentary is good. 3 years, good. Valet complimentary maintenance, even better. You can have the folks at Genesis of Baton Rouge come pick your car up, bring it to the dealership. They'll handle all your maintenance, drive it right on back to you. You never skip a beat. It's all part of the experience of being a Genesis driver. If you have not gone by the dealership, if you have not sat behind the wheel of a Genesis, just go try it out. Put it on your list. If you've been looking for a car in Baton Rouge, you've probably been on Airline Highway. Just make that one more stop at Genesis of Baton Rouge. It's on Airline and Pico, right across from Women's Hospital, and see the difference. When you think Genesis, think luxury. When you think luxury, don't think, can't afford that. Go see. Start your process online at genesisofbatonrouge.com and finish it right there at the dealership with a brand new Genesis. Every car that's on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
All right, LSU and Alabama in hoops tomorrow. We'll talk about it at the top of hour number 2. Also got an anniversary to get to today, so looking forward to that. But let's talk about the conference championship games coming up on Sunday. We'll start with the one that has some local interest, the 2 o'clock game on Fox. The 6th-seeded Commanders at the number 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles, a division matchup between NFC East rivals. I think everyone's talking about Jalen Hurts, injury. I get it. Like, it's a big deal that Jalen Hurts tweaked his knee last week, didn't run the ball after he tweaked his knee, and that's a big piece to what Philadelphia wants to do. No question, that's a big deal. I do not think it's the biggest injury in this game. I don't think it's even close. Because when you know that Sam Cosmi is out, who is playing right guard for the Commanders. You may recall, if you're an LSU fan, that Cosmi was the tackle for Texas when LSU went to Austin a few years ago. Elite player. Big-time draft pick and has been a starter for Washington for a couple years now. He's a very, very good interior offensive lineman. He tore his ACL against Detroit. So you've got a newcomer at right guard against Jalen Carter. That is a nightmare. Because Jalen Carter, to me, is the most disruptive interior defender in the NFL now that Aaron Donald has moved on. And there is no better way to get a quarterback off his game or to disrupt the flow of an offense than to blow up the middle of the line of scrimmage and create a situation where the quarterback's got to move. Like, that's just the best way to do it. We saw the one time Mahomes got to the Super Bowl and lost. It was because of that. We've seen Brady get into trouble in Super Bowls because teams were getting pressure up the middle. We've seen Joe Burrow running for his life with that terrible Bengals offensive line a couple of years ago. Like, if you can't feel comfortable back there with your interior hold, I mean, edge rushers are one thing, and they'll make their plays. But if you can't block the interior, then you've got no shot. So that, to me, Cosmi being out is such a huge deal in this game. We know on the other side that the Eagles are going to want to run the ball like crazy. I saw this stat on ESPN's preview up on ESPN.com. Barkley gained 130 yards and 3 touchdowns on 3 of his carries against Washington over 2 games. So 3 of the plays went for a total of 130 yards and 3 touchdowns, big play touchdowns. The 26 other carries that Saquon Barkley had against the Redskins, well, there it was, the Commanders, 2 yards or less. So I'm not sure exactly what to make of that. You're giving up huge plays, but far more of your reps against the run are better than those. 26 good reps, 3 bad reps, just 3 catastrophic reps. That's where Philly is going to try to butter its bread early in this game. We know that. It's going to be Saquon early and often, especially with Jalen Hurts a little bit dinged up. But they've got the ability to go to A.J. Brown, they can go to Devontae Smith, and they've got dudes on the outside as well. I'm concerned with the Washington defense. They were opportunistic against Detroit, and they got 5 turnovers. I find that to be unsustainable. Can they get 2 in this game? I would love that, but it's just harder to count on turnovers. Fumbles, interceptions. It's easier to count on the traditional stuff, stopping the run, rushing the passer, tackling, that type of stuff. So I struggle to get on board with Washington winning this game. Maybe that's me trying to be protective and not try to get overconfident. And maybe that's just because I think Philly's got a much better roster, top to bottom, than Washington does. Washington wasn't supposed to be here. And Jaden has taken this team on his back and carried them to this point, making every play on 3rd downs, making every play on 4th downs, making every play in the 4th quarter. And Washington's winning a bunch of these games late. Now, that wasn't the case in Detroit. They went up there and kicked their butts, but that's, to me, less about a team completely hitting its stride, more about a team that just forced a bunch of turnovers and had a great quarterback go. Jaden's the hope. Y'all know that. And I have that hope remaining. I would pick the Eagles to win this game. The number is 6. That feels like a lot to me. But they're at home. They got a better roster. I would probably take Philly to cover if I had to, but I understand that it's a lot of points to deal with, especially with a guy that's playing as well as Jaden Daniels on the other side of things. I'm hopeful that Jaden gets it done, but we'll just have to see. Now, on the other side in the AFC, you've got Bills and Chiefs, 2 seed versus the 1 seed in Kansas City. There was a big faction of people that were sick and tired of watching LeBron James and Steph Curry play in the finals over and over and over and over. I was not one of those. I like to watch those guys play. I think it's great. I would rather watch those 2 guys play than some random Jazz team get in there. Just as an example. Like I liked watching 2 of the greatest players who have ever walked compete at the highest level of the sport, and I didn't get sick of it, even though we saw it a lot. And I'm not sick of watching Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid play Josh Allen. Like, I think it's awesome. The Chiefs have kind of transformed who they are, and we understand that. And the Bills have done a great job of a retool. It wasn't even a rebuild. It was more of a retool. And here they are. A lot of people think as good or better than Kansas City. The number would suggest they have a better team than Kansas City because Kansas City is only a 2-point favorite. So at best, it's a pick 'em. At the other side, maybe Buffalo's better. But they've lost 3 straight to Kansas City in the postseason. And Patrick Mahomes has the reputation of just doing what he needs to do to win it. The Chiefs have gone 8 straight games, including the playoffs, without committing a turnover. They have turned this into, from what was the most high-flying offense in the sport, to a ball-controlled defensive team. It's amazing. Amazing to me. And the Bills are not that. The Bills want to go score. They want to make the highlight reel play. They want to go, 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 go. The Bills have been great on 3rd down. They were good on 3rd down against Kansas City back in Week 11. They converted 9 of 15. They ran 71 plays in that game to 52 for the Chiefs, and they held the ball for 34 of the 60 minutes. And that allowed the Bills to play as well as they did in that game. Now they'll have to take it on the road, go to Arrowhead, and figure something out. Now you're talking about the Chiefs with ball control. The Bills play a ball control style. They only committed 8 turnovers this year. That was the fewest in the NFL. Also, 35 takeaways. Regular season and playoff, that's the most in the league. That's one way to retool it and start winning, is to deal with those turnovers. And that's a stat that continues to come back. And I wrestle with turnovers big time when I come on this show. Because while I think that quarterbacks throwing picks can be something you can count on, like that Jameis Winston year where he threw 30 picks, like you can count on him turning the ball over. I don't think anybody was stunned watching the game when LSU played at Texas A&M and Garrett Nussmeier threw it to the wrong team 3 times in the second half. He had done that. But it feels unlikely for a defense to consistently produce turnovers week over week and count on that. The Saints did it for a year, but it's hard to rely on every single week, but it's such a huge story. And that's why I wrestle with it. It's like, do I need to break down turnovers, or like, is it just something that's more often by chance? It's important, but how much can you really count on it? I don't know. But these two teams are really good, and they're big rivals, and I'm excited to watch them go at it on Sunday evening. I think it's going to be a heck of a ball game. I'm once again going to lean on the home team here. I think there are probably a lot of people who are going to go with Washington and go with Buffalo here. A lot of people. I'm going to stick with the home teams. I'm going to stick with the Eagles, who have been great for 4 or 5 years. I'm going to stick with the Chiefs, who have been great for longer than that. That's just kind of how I see it. I would take the home teams and lay the points in both instances. I will, in fact, do that literally with neither instance. Y'all, I think, know that by now, but that's my read on the game, which gives you a perfectly reasonable spot to go ahead and absolutely fade me from the jump and take the 2 road dogs. That's your prerogative, but that's where I am. Beck, you're looking at this. What do you think?
It's hard for me to not go with the Eagles, but if the Hurts injury, I understand where you're coming from with the injury for Cosme, but if Jalen Hurts doesn't play, he's
going to play. It's just a matter of can he run.
That's what I mean. Like he's going to play, but is he actually going to play like he usually does, which he probably won't, because the success in the Eagles is predicated on his ability to run the ball. If he can't run the ball, it's going to be very challenging for them to score. I will say this though: the Commanders' defense hasn't been very inspiring. The last few weeks, even the whole season, really has.
Except for turnovers.
Yeah, they've been pretty mediocre. So
I would counter that with Jalen Hurts. I would say if you got Kenneth Gainwell running the ball, that's a big deal that Hurts is injured. If he's injured and can just turn around and hand it to Saquon Barkley, all of a sudden that feels a little bit better. Your knee tends to feel a little bit better when you can hand it to Saquon Barkley.
That's true, but I just think when you have to account for both the quarterback and the running back in the style of offense like that, and with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, we saw Derrick Henry have an incredible season, and I think part of that is because the teams couldn't just focus solely on him in terms of running the ball. So I would probably still lean on the Eagles, especially at home, and then with the Bills and the Chiefs, I'm going to keep riding the Bills. I mean, I've said this before. I said this before the season started. I still thought the Bills were going to have a really good chance of making the Super Bowl, even though they some people thought they weren't going to be as good with some of the losses they had in the preseason. But I'm going to ride with the Bills. I think Josh Allen will get the Bills over the hump this time. I don't think the Chiefs' offense, if this gets into a shootout, the Chiefs have not proven.
The Chiefs will lose.
They will lose because they have not proven this year that they can score more than 30 points. They literally have not done it all season. So if the Bills can get this thing going and get this thing into a shootout, I like the Bills, and so that's where I'm at right now for those.
All right, I'll take the home teams. We'll see. I will be very, very much pulling for Washington. I think it'd be so cool to have the Super Bowl in New Orleans with Jaden Daniels in the spotlight, trying to do something that, has a rookie ever won the Super Bowl? I have no idea. I've looked up that stat, and I certainly can't come up with one off the top of my head. Tom Brady wasn't a rookie when Bledsoe got hurt, I don't think. I think
no rookie has ever done it.
Okay, so that was just a top of my head deal. That'd be quite a storyline in the home state with the quarterback who won the Heisman down the street to go to the Super Bowl and get that done. So I'll certainly be pulling for that on Sunday, as well I think most of Louisiana at this point. So that's a look at the conference championship games. We'll come back with a little anniversary here to close out hour number 1.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
I'm telling you about audio video security solutions. avssla.com is the website. Nothing more important than the safety and security of your home and your family. And for us, audio video security solutions has just been awesome in installing our security system, our burglar alarm, and the cameras. Got the app right there on my phone. I've got crystal clear picture that I can pause, rewind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't pay any cloud storage fees. I can activate and deactivate the burglar alarm remotely from wherever I am. And then if there's any issue, which there generally isn't unless the 3-year-old gets involved, we can call Mitchell Fisher on his cell phone, and he's come out twice and helped us out by getting things fixed. And it usually takes him about 10 minutes because it's so simple, but we don't know what we're doing. He does. Give him a call. 225-439-7920 is the phone number. That's Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number. He owns the company locally right here in Baton Rouge. They can handle your audio, they can handle your video, and certainly they can handle your security. It's audio, video, security solutions online at avssla.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Up hour number 1 here, brought to you by Corks Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. Delicious jumbo Gulf shrimp, crispy fried catfish, the shoestring fries, husk puppies, coleslaw, honey butter rolls, beignet bites, crawfish etouffee. It's all there at Corks Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. It is an anniversary. We do some quick math here. That would be 15 years since January the 20th, 2010. And this happened down in the Superdome.
There have been a lot of them. Saints fans don't want to see another. Snap, placement, kick by Hartley, and it is good! It's good! It's good! Pigs have flown. Hell is frozen over. The Saints are on their way to the Super Bowl.
I'll tell you what, Garrett Hartley, I mean, you could kind of tell by his body language out there on the field that he felt like, I think I've got this thing done.
It's a good call. I don't know. I mean, it's a great call. First of all, I didn't even mean to slide it. That's a great call by Jim Henderson. I don't know that I can recall hearing that inflection in a play-by-play man's voice. Jim Henderson is one of the greatest play-by-play men in football history. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to him my entire childhood, even if my car was pulling for the other team. That's my dad, who despises the Saints with every fiber of his being. But as I got into radio and like understanding and appreciating the journalism side of things, I just always loved listening to Jim Henderson call a game. And I can't recall ever hearing relief like that in somebody's voice for such an amazing moment. More often than not, you hear the passion, and you may hear some folks yelling and screaming in the back of the booth that are on stats or on color or off mic. And this was just like, I just can't believe it. And I've never asked Jim Henderson this. I've never spoken to Jim Henderson, and I've never read an interview about when he said that. But I can't imagine that was something he scripted or planned. I think that's just the natural. That's the natural emotion of a play-by-play, and a man who's called that team for decades, that had seen so much ineptitude, that was finally seeing greatness, and maybe never thought that day would ever come, and then it did. And we could talk about that game for days, and we could talk about the stories of where you were or where we were, and the emotion in the city of New Orleans when that happened. But I think for me, one of the indelible things is Jim Henderson's radio call of Garrett Hartley's kick that beat the Vikings and sent the Saints to the Super Bowl, which we know now they would ultimately win. I've told this story on the air a couple of times. I'll make it brief this time. That weekend, of course, that was on a Sunday. That weekend, my parents had hosted a little party for a family friend that was getting engaged. And there were like probably 30 beers left over or whatever. And I was in college. And so I was up in Shreveport for that, and they sent us down with the ice chest, with all the extra beers. My mom's like, no one here's going to drink that. Just take it back to college. It's like, okay. So we drove it down I-49 and showed up and had a fun watch party for the NFC Championship game. And I famously was not in the room when the kick went through. I thought I could go to the bathroom and get back, and I didn't. So my friends started screaming and yelling in the room. And at that point, and even still, like I wasn't truly invested in whether the Saints won or lost at that point. In fact, I was probably kind of pulling against them because of my roots. That is long gone at this point, and I do want them to win at this point. I missed the kick, but that's one of the great days in South Louisiana sports history. Beck, you were just a young pup at that point. What do you remember about that?
Man, I distinctly remember watching the Super Bowl. I was at my parents' old. We were at my parents' old house. My whole family, a lot of my family were there watching it, and I remember after we won, I had just started becoming a drummer and playing in the middle school band, I think. And
Excellent.
I had this idea that I was going to like create this makeshift strap with my snare drum and like walk down the street playing the snare drum or something because we won the Super Bowl. I don't remember. I remember the NFC Championship game. I remember watching it. I remember Brett Favre throwing some interceptions.
He threw
specifically
a
very crucial one
end.
at the end of the game to pretty much give the Saints the win there. But yeah, that's I definitely remember the Super Bowl more so. But I do remember watching that NFC Championship game.
It was a special moment there in New Orleans. It's Garrett Hartley. Pigs flew, and the Saints went to the Super Bowl. They would win it just 2 weeks later down in Miami. So an anniversary, I guess 15 years since Pigs flew. That would have been January 24th of 2010. All right, that's it for hour number one. If you missed any of hour number one, catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on-demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can find us. My baseball thoughts to lead off the show today. Talking about LSU's pitching staff, what we heard from Jay Johnson at Media Day today. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com, talking football, specifically the LSU offensive line. We preview the NFL's conference title games as well, so go back and find all that wherever you find your sound. The Saints maybe getting closer to hiring a coach, but they don't have to hurry. I'll talk about that in hour number two, and we'll get a preview for the LSU and Alabama game from Tuscaloosa tomorrow. Come back. It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
I'm telling you about Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is the website. Jonathan Carbo and his team are fantastic to work with. I told you last week I got a chance to sit down with them and really start to talk some insurance, talk shop with them, which I realize is not the most fun thing in the world for a lot of y'all, but I've been out of the game for a couple of years, so I just kind of wanted to get a sense for how it is that they won business and how they kept business at the Highland Insurance Group, and it's because of their expertise. A lot of folks, when they pick their insurance provider, just care about the price. And that's one way to do it, but it's not the only way to do it. And I can promise you that when something bad happens, you're going to hope that you have done it the proper way by evaluating your policies. Let the Highland Insurance Group do a free audit of your policies. They'll let you know if there are some fixes that can be made, both on coverage and in terms of premium. And if that's the case, you're going to switch over and you're going to stay at the Highland Insurance Group for a very, very long time. Give them a call or check them out online today. It's HighlandIG.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group online at HighlandIG.com.